This is the new £222,000 McLaren 750S, the replacement for the now legendary 720. It may look similar on the surface, but McLaren says this is an altogether different animal. Almost a third of its parts are new or have been changed, with upgrades that make it lighter, more powerful, faster, and more engaging, both in coupe form on track and as a £240,000 Spider, which we'll begin our tests with on the road.
And here's the big change: extra horses, 750 of them, 30 more than the 720S. And you get more torque, 800 Newton meters, also an increase of 30. And you don't need me to tell you that this thing absolutely flies frighteningly quick. And it sounds good. You get this combination of the turbo whistles and this new exhaust that absolutely slaps. I'm liking this.
The extra power is the result of a new fuel pump, higher turbo boost pressure, an ECU tune, and a redesigned triple-layer head gasket to help maintain the appropriate compression levels. 0 to 62 is polished off in 2.8 seconds, a tenth quicker than the 720S, but it's the mid-range acceleration that is a significant improvement over the previous car.
The 720S managed 0 to 124 miles an hour in 7.9 seconds, quick. This does it in 7.2. It's rapid.
To put that into context, it's a tenth quicker than the more powerful Ferrari 296 GTB. The legendary Aventador SVJ needs 8.6 seconds to reach the same speed, nearly a second and a half more.
But what I want to know is, does it suffer from the age-old McLaren issue of turbo lag? Here we are, third gear, automatic, floor it. See, there is a little bit of turbo lag. You floor it and not a lot happens. It winds up, it shifts down, and then suddenly, bang, you're off and running. It might be a 750 horsepower car most of the time, but when you floor it from a low speed, it feels a bit more like a 450 horsepower car before it goes crazy. In fact, I think we've got to be brutally honest here. The power increase is only 4%. It's a bit like comparing a car with 100 horsepower versus a car with 104 horsepower. There's a difference, but whether you can feel it or not, that's up for debate.
You'll need pretty sensitive eyes to be able to tell the difference between the 750S and the 720S too. Apart from a few minor changes, it's a case of blink and you'll miss it. The main changes concern the front, which is smoother than it was before, with a body-colored bumper and slightly smaller skull-shaped headlights. The roof is the same as before, taking 11 seconds to open or close, with a small section on the tonneau cover for storage of very small items in addition to a large frunk. The rear, meanwhile, has that lovely sounding all-new center exit exhaust inspired by the P1 and a 765 LT inspired wing that's 20% larger than before. There are some other useful changes too, which you'd expect given the 720S and 750S are 7 years removed.
Okay, first up, we've got a new infotainment system which comes with Apple CarPlay as standard. We like that. It's wired CarPlay, you gotta have it plugged in, but the car does have 2 USB ports, one Type A and one high-speed Type C for rapid charging. It's also got a brand new Bowers & Wilkins stereo system. I was curious to listen to this because McLaren's audio systems have typically not been very impressive to me, but I had a play with this earlier on and I can confirm it slaps. It sounds really good. There's also a new instrument binnacle. So on the 720S you had a instrument display that folded up or down, it was motorized. Here it doesn't move unless you adjust the steering, it goes up and down, in and out, so it's always visible and in your line of sight, but it does lack that little bit of drama compared to the 720S's system. One upside is that this setup now resembles what you get in the McLaren Elva, and that means that the handling and powertrain adjustments up here above the steering wheel can be accessed without really taking your hands off the steering wheel. That's quite nice. I quite like these seats as well. It comes with sports seats as standard, but these are the optional comfort seats, which are fairly nice, a little bit hard under the bum area, but supportive enough. I think you can go for a long distance drive without too much hassle. Or if you want to go one up, you can go for the track seats or the seats that you get in the McLaren Senna, which I'm going to try later on.
In terms of daily usability, we also get an updated suspension system with springs that are 6% softer at the front and 4% stiffer at the back, which really helps ride comfort on the road. The nose lift system now takes approximately 5 seconds to deploy, not that you really need it for speed bumps as the car flies over these as well as a family hatchback. And there's a 3-year warranty with 3 years free servicing. Impressive enough, and none of it comes at the expense of what makes this car exciting.
The other thing I like is how involving it feels. It's got new engine mounts, so you can feel a bit of vibration coming up through your bum, through the chassis, which makes it feel a little bit more involving. And also when you combine that with the sound of this new exhaust, the sound of that whistling from the twin turbo V8, it's such an emotional car. You feel really connected to it. It puts a smile on your face without you even going quickly. That's the sign of a good motor.
Decent then, but is it decent enough? The 750S faces very stiff competition from the likes of the Ferrari 296 GTB, which features more power, more technology, and importantly, doesn't look like a slightly facelifted version of a car that was released the better part of a decade ago. But McLaren still has one big trump card, which we can assess on track, specifically with the 750S coupe. Weight.
We live in a world now where everyone is obsessed with power. If you're not making a car with at least 800 horsepower, or better yet, one with 4 figures, then no one's interested. But McLaren have gone a very different route. This thing is light. Total weight, including fluids, that's petrol, water, the driver's blood, is 1438 for the Spider and 1389 for the coupe. That's 30 kilos lighter than the 720S and around 200 kilograms lighter than this car's nearest competitor.
To achieve this, McLaren has changed many parts. The 10-spoke 19 and 20-inch offset lightweight forged wheels come as standard, saving 13.8 kilograms. The new springs and dampers save 2 kilograms. That center exit stainless steel exhaust saves 2.2 kilograms. The new windscreen, 1.6, while inside the lightened instrument display saves 1.8 kilograms, and the optional carbon fiber racing seats fitted here save a huge 17.5 kilograms over the standard 720S buckets. And that combination, in addition to the increase in power, means the 750S feels very much at home on a racetrack.
If you're one of these people out there always complaining about how heavy modern sports cars have become, I hope to God you are not one of the same people out there who are complaining for one reason or another about McLaren, because McLaren's approach is completely different. This feels night and day different compared to so many supercars on the market. It's light. And you feel that lightness everywhere. First of all, you feel it under acceleration because the car is that much lighter, that much more powerful. It just wants to take off. It might only be a 750 horsepower car, but here we are doing 220, 230, 240, 260, braking at the 200 meter board. Oh, it just feels alive in a straight line. And then you feel it under braking. Look at that. Where most modern sports cars tend to feel so heavy, there's so much inertia. When you get on the brakes into a big braking zone, they can feel a bit like you're in a runaway train rapidly approaching the scene of an accident, but in this, it just feels under control, it feels tidy, it feels like the brakes bloody work, which is an amazing compliment. But you also feel it in the corners. The car is tremendously agile. There's a lot going on here. So first of all, they've widened the front track, the distance between the front wheels by 6 millimeters, and they've also increased the speed of the steering rack, which means the car feels so much more alive on turning. We talk about a go-kart-like feel in a lot of cars, but actually it ends up being a bit of an exaggeration in a lot of cars, but in this, it feels so darty, so pointy, so responsive.
If oversteer is your thing, you will love the 750S. It has a choice of Pirelli P0s, Corsas or Trofeo R rubber, and overcoming the grip in all three is fairly easily done. But when it does break away into a slide, it's accessible yet rewarding. Easy enough to get a taste of with McLaren's variable drift control, but far more rewarding and exhilarating with all the systems turned off. Arguably more so, in my opinion, than any of this car's rivals. If you want to keep things neat and tidy, there's 5% more downforce than the 720S, with McLaren claiming to focus more on aero balance than outright downforce. This particular McLaren is geared more towards user engagement than outright lap times.
They've also softened up the front suspension by 6%. Doesn't sound like an awful lot, but it does make a difference. What it means is that there's a bit more compliance in that front suspension, and that results in a little bit more grip on turning. So the front has more grip, the rear has slightly less comparative grip than the front, which means that as you turn in, you get loads of feel, loads of feedback. And the car, you can drive it on the nose. It's really nice when you get on the power. The rears want to light up. The balance in this thing is just breathtaking. It's a wonderful thing to drive. The other really striking thing is the gearbox. Still the same 7-speed dual clutch transmission as you got in the 720S, but it's been recalibrated. It's got a couple of new tricks up its sleeve. The first is that when you downshift too early, the car will actually refuse the downshift initially, but save up that command and then shift down when the car is able to actually execute that downshift. The other trick up its sleeve is a system called ignition cut. So when you shift up, it will actually cut the ignition but keep the fuel flowing, so that when the clutch re-engages, you get a huge shove in the back on upshift. It's really, really engaging. That only happens in sport mode, by the way. If you want to dial it out and get faster, smoother gear shifts, you can shift it into track, and it'll give you a buttery smooth gear change, but I don't want that. I love these aggressive shifts. Okay, 200 meters. It's still too early. Do you know what? I've been utterly ruined by some of these modern sports cars. The weight just means you have to brake so much earlier and expect so much inertia, but in this thing, different gravy. This is a throwback. The big question then, has McLaren done enough? Well, you know what? If I owned a 720S, I don't think the 750S would be enough to convince me to upgrade. But if I didn't have a 720S and I was looking for a sports car that's fast, engaging, light and fun, I know there are more modern sports cars out there, but the 750S is enough to make you think twice. This thing is a beast.